Probably many people know that the phrase, manna from heaven, came to us from the Bible. Now it is a popular expression. We use it when we want to describe something very pleasant and long-awaited. But what was manna really like? So, in the Bible, or more precisely in the book of Exodus, it is told how the Jewish people, whom Moses led out of Egyptian captivity, began to complain that in the desert everyone would die of hunger. People even began to remember with joy that time of captivity, when they had garlic on the table. God, hearing their cries, performed an amazing miracle. Every morning, when people woke up and left their tents, unusual food awaited them. Right under the feet of the Jews, like morning dew, lay the treasured manna. Yes, heavenly manna had to be collected and cooked for food. This mysterious substance fell straight from the sky. And what it was like, what was its composition, this is still a mystery. In appearance it resembled frost, in taste, bread. This word entered the languages of many Christian peoples to denote divine or spiritual food. In the Bible, in the book of Exodus, it is said how, the dew went up, and behold, on the face of the desert something small, grainy, like frost on the ground. The book of Numbers states that, when the dew fell on the camp at night, then the manna fell on it. It had to be collected early in the morning, because under the rays of the sun the manna quickly melted. It was the size of coriander seeds, only white. It is said that about 3.5 liters of manna were collected per person per day. Some Israelites were diligent enough to go far for it. Others simply lay down on the ground and caught it with their hands. In Jewish tradition, it was believed that manna fell near the tents of those who strongly believed in God and far from the dwellings of people who doubted him. Manna was a kind of grain, about the size of a mustard seed, that is, quite small. Women ground it into flour, then cooked porridge and even baked flatbreads. Manna was slightly sweet and oily. It tasted like a flatbread with honey and butter even when raw, but they began to cook it like bread. And at the same time, manna from heaven could not be stored. God introduced very interesting rules for collecting heavenly manna. Firstly, this unique cereal had to be collected only on the first 5 days of the week. On the 6th day, it was necessary to collect twice as much as on a normal day, and the last, 7th, day of the week, the Jews had to rest and eat what was collected the day before. And secondly, God's people could not collect manna for stock. It was allowed to take exactly as much as was needed for food for one day. If the Jews made a stock, then the cereal would already have worms in it the next morning and it would spoil. Amazing fact, manna collected on the 6th day remained fresh on the 7th day. God introduced such rules so that his people would believe that the Creator could feed them and give them everything they needed. But it would not be possible to ensure, in a human way by making a stash of heavenly manna. The life and sustenance of his people were entirely in his hands. After the Jewish people left the desert, the need for manna disappeared and it stopped appearing in the mornings. But so that the people would remember this miracle, God commanded to put some manna in a vessel and keep it in the Ark of the Covenant. The Bible implies that for almost all 40 years of their journey in the desert, the Israelites ate only manna. Although it is said that they left Egypt with their cattle, which guaranteed the availability of meat and milk. The heavenly food appeared soon after the children of Zion exhausted their supplies and began to complain about Moses, who had persuaded them to flee Egypt. The Lord stopped sending it when the Jews reached Canaan, that is, the inhabited lands. For many centuries, Christians and Jews have been concerned with the question, what is manna from heaven? The word itself comes from the phrase, manhu, which translates as, what is it? For a long time, versions have been put forward that manna was the natural secretions of various insects that feed on sugar-bearing plants. It is not for nothing that in Arabic the word man means aphid. The manna scale insect, one of the subspecies of the mealworm, is a suitable candidate. It feeds on tamarisk, which until recently was widespread on the Sinai Peninsula. and it secretes secretions similar to honeydew. In desert conditions, this liquid quickly dries out, turning into a hard sticky substance, first white, then yellow and brown. 100 years ago, local Arabs sold the secretions of the scale insect under the name of manna from heaven. They tasted like honey. Also, the secretions of aphids living on the leaves of the Turkish oak tree can be used as manna, although this tree is currently not widespread in the region of interest to us. These secretions can also be eaten. In Iran and Turkey they are added to bread for a sweet taste. However, regardless of the type of insects that could produce manna, it contains mainly sugar and certainly cannot guarantee the survival of a large number of people over a long period of time. Therefore, attempts to explain the origin of manna from a scientific point of view are just numerous versions that have no solid evidence. And in my opinion, the most likely version of the origin of manna from heaven is God's miracle. And the story described in the Bible is true, from beginning to end.